Hey, this is Ryan Hayden from Rowan Table, and in this video, I want to talk about why all the PHP haters are dead wrong. Um, I hear this all the time. We've had clients come to us and say, I can't believe you guys use PHP. PHP is bad. I've heard developers say PHP is garbage. People just like to dump on PHP. But at Rowan Table, we use PHP for like all of our projects, and we're not really interested in doing anything else. Um, I think that if you are making a typical software as a service web based product in 2020, you cannot beat particularly the Laravel stack of PHP. It's just amazing. And I want to explain that. So, before I do, I want to talk about why developers hate PHP so much. So, I got four reasons that I've come up with why PHP gets so much hate. And there's some truth to this. It's not bad, okay? The first reason is PHP itself, the language PHP, is not great. Compared to, say, Ruby or Python or JavaScript, PHP is kind of messy. It's not always consistent. It has this weird syntax. It definitely lags behind some other languages in that regard. And people have this idea that PHP is slow. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Um, all of these things are valid, but they don't really account for the recent improvements of PHP. Most of the websites that are running on PHP run on like version 5.6, and now we're on version 7.4. And the newer versions of PHP are super fast, and they fixed a lot of those syntax problems of the earlier versions. It's still not as nice as like Ruby or JavaScript, but it's definitely not a burden to write in PHP these days. It's actually pretty good. So the first reason people hate it is because the PHP language isn't great. The second reason is because they kind of view PHP like the kiddie pool of programming languages. Um, PHP is behind like 60% of the internet, and it's the dominant server side language and has been forever. Almost every developer cuts their teeth on PHP, usually making things in WordPress. So PHP kind of has this stigma of being the kiddie pool of web development. It's like uh, for web developers that don't know any better, use PHP. The third reason people hate uh, PHP is because, as I've alluded to, WordPress runs on PHP, and most developers I know have a bad opinion of WordPress. Um, PHP and WordPress are sort of tied together in a lot of people's minds. And WordPress, I think it's like 37% of the internet runs on WordPress. A huge amount of the internet is running on this content management system, WordPress. And there's a whole segment of people that claim to be web developers that aren't actually web developers. All they really do is make things in WordPress. And they have a bad, most developers have a bad opinion of these guys if you're not one of these guys. And I want to say this: WordPress should not be the foundation of a software as a service application. You should reach for WordPress for one reason and one reason only, and that's if you're running a blog or like a magazine site or something. For almost anything else, there are way better tools for the job than WordPress. So people hate PHP because of the WordPress connection. The fourth reason that people hate PHP is just because it's not the cool thing these days. The cool kids are writing applications in Node.js or Python or Go or something. Anything but PHP. It just doesn't seem as hot as other platforms or other languages. And this is true. But just because something's not cool doesn't mean it's worthless. I mean, I'm not very cool. I kind of resent that. You know, nobody sells, I thought of this example, nobody sells radial arm saws anymore. But I have a 1957 DeWalt radial arm saw in my shop that was actually my great grandfather's, and it is way better than anything that you could buy at Home Depot today. Just because something is old or because there's newer tools that come out doesn't invalidate the old stuff. And just because something is not cool or hip doesn't mean that it's not awesome. And I think that's the reasons why people hate on PHP, because they think it's slow or old. They don't like the language itself. the WordPress connection. It's just not cool. Here's why I think all of those reasons are false and need to be just ignored. Okay, the first reason, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot, is Laravel. The truth is, I am not a PHP fan. Most of the people I work with are not PHP fans. PHP deserves a lot of the hate that it gets. But what saves PHP for us is actually Laravel. Laravel is this PHP application framework that, in my opinion, has no other equals. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. It's been around for about 10 years, and that 10 years, it's developed kind of a cult following among developers. And most of those developers would tell you they don't love PHP, but they love Laravel, and they love the Laravel framework, and the ecosystem around Laravel just makes it super worthwhile and saves so much time and effort. So the first reason why I think you should still use PHP is Laravel. The second reason related to that is because of the Laravel ecosystem. What is that? Well, Laravel is kind of unique in this world of web frameworks in that it offers more than just an open source application framework. They have all of these really awesome first-party tools that make developing software as a service software so much easier. They have this thing called Laravel Forge, which is a tool for setting up and managing cloud servers. So it helps you manage servers on AWS or DigitalOcean and saves a ton of time and money. It's just amazing. It's so much easier than anything else that I've ever used, way easier than setting stuff up yourself. They have something called Laravel Envoyer, which is a tool for when your cloud server run applications grow and have to span across multiple servers. It just sort of takes care of that for you very easily. They have this thing called Laravel Spark, which is this paid package that gives you this amazing starting point for building a software as a service and takes care of things like billing and invoicing and user management and team and user impersonation and API authorization and all this kind of stuff that would take you months and months of work to do yourself. You can just pay Laravel a couple $100 and save yourself so much time and money and heartache. They have this thing called Laravel Nova, which is like a drop-in admin panel that you can use to manage your database. So you don't have to write a GUI for everything that you're doing. You can just drop in Laravel Nova, spend just a little bit of money and save a ton of time and money. And it's just great. And then recently they launched this thing called Vapor, which is this one-stop serverless deployment service that scales infinitely. So basically you just write your app in Laravel and you set up an AWS account and you turn on Vapor and you don't have to worry about scaling your app at all. I mean, it takes care of backups and scaling and everything. It's great. So Laravel, the ecosystem is amazing. And to add to that, they have this like fantastic documentation and there's podcasts and there's conferences and there's sites and there's blogs and there's books. It's just an awesome, being a Laravel developer is just an awesome and friendly place to be if you're making web-based software. All right. The third reason why PHP is something I think you should still consider is because PHP code is really easy to deploy. We deploy all of our stuff using Laravel Forge and DigitalOcean, and it's like a breeze. But even if we didn't use these tools, PHP is definitely the easiest thing to deploy into production of any of the coding languages. I used to build apps in Node, and building them was easy. I mean, it wasn't super hard to build the apps. I still think Laravel's easier, but setting them up for production, setting them up for deployment, it was such a pain in the neck. And then you'd have to run watchers. You'd have to manually configure these like Nginx proxies. It wasn't fun at all. But a PHP app, I mean, you could drop a PHP app into like shared hosting. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could drop it into just about anything and it would work fine. So PHP code is easy to deploy. A fourth reason why PHP is something you should consider is that Laravel developers are pretty easy to find. This is an invaluable benefit, in my opinion, for using Laravel and PHP, is that you can always find developers to add to your team. And usually, because of the way the framework is organized, they can usually just jump right in. If you're on Upwork, I just searched for Laravel on Upwork, and there were like over 600 developers just in the United States on Upwork. Probably a lot more than that. Like I was counting and I got to the 60th page in their pagination system, and I was just like, I'm done counting. There's so many Laravel developers out there. There has to be thousands and thousands of freelancers worldwide that will work on a Laravel project. So finding people is probably easier and cheaper than finding people to work in other, languages. So developers are easy to find. A fifth reason is that well-written PHP code is actually really fast. So there's these articles that you can look up to, and I'm going to link them in the show notes. One of them is from famza.net, and one of them is on Stack Overflow, talking about the speed of PHP 7, the newest version of PHP, versus Python and versus Node. And PHP 7 is blistering fast. It is so fast. And it's not quite as fast as Node, but the way that it works and the way that it handles error and does like garbage collection and stuff, you're not going to see any difference in actual practice. PHP is the days where PHP was kind of slow and bothersome, those are long gone. PHP 7 is really, really good. So here's the conclusion. Yes, there are bad parts of PHP. PHP has got some things that still are in the language that are sort of frustrating. But PHP in the PHP ecosystem, particularly the Laravel ecosystem, has so much going for it that it more than makes up for the bad. And if you're going to build software as a service, online software today in 2020, or you're building something that needs an API, don't believe the naysayers. Don't believe the PHP haters. They don't know what they're talking about when it comes to PHP. PHP in the Laravel ecosystem is awesome and should probably be your first choice for making web-based software today.